So here's my idea for a movement shooter. I want to make a game where you have a shotgun and there's a speedometer on that shotgun. And however fast you're going is how much damage you do. My goal for this mechanic is to encourage the player to play aggressively and reward risky maneuvers. So I started by opening a new Unity 3D project and I consulted my best friend, YouTube. I saw that a YouTuber Danny had a FPS controller tutorial. So I opened up the video, went straight to the description, opened up the GitHub link, went to the source code, and boom, we have player movement. No movement shooter can really be complete without a grappling hook. And Danny also had a tutorial on the grappling hook, so you know exactly what I did. Now this grappling hook was cool and all, but there was one issue that I had with it. It used a spring joint, which caused more of a swinging motion than a pulling motion, and I wanted a movement that was similar to Titanfall 2's grappling hook, where it pulls you and you can swing at the same time. So I scrapped that and started to write my own grappling hook script. So now we have a grappling hook that actually feels pretty smooth. So we've got some good movement going, but it still feels kind of stiff. So I found this tutorial which showed how to use a spring joint on the camera to exaggerate the movements when you jump and come back down to the ground. This is a pretty subtle change, but it makes the player feel more grounded in the game. With the grappling hook and a little bit of sliding, you're actually able to get going pretty fast, but there's no way to redirect all of your speed into another direction quickly. So I decided that sliding would redirect your speed in whichever direction you're looking. The slide also helps you retain your speed, so you can keep your speed going around the corner or making quick changes in direction. So now I've got the movement part down, but now I need to get the shooter aspect going. I started by making a super basic shotgun model in Blender. I know it doesn't look great, but I'll probably fix it in the future. So I brought the model over to Unity and I hooked it up to the player, so now you can shoot. And I added a muzzle flash with the help of Unity's particle system. Initially, I started with a projectile-based firing system, but I quickly realized that this would not work well because the player is able to move incredibly fast, and having projectile travel time makes the game feel kinda sloppy. So I switched to a raycast-based system, which has 0 projectile travel time, so the shooting feels a lot more snappy. So now with the shotgun in place, I need some enemies to shoot at. I started by making a capsule and giving him glasses. Then I made it so that when we shoot him, he bleeds, using Unity's particle system. Now this capsule right here wouldn't be much of an enemy if he couldn't fight back against us. So first, the enemy needs to be able to chase us. To do this, we'll add a nav mesh agent component to the enemy and a nav mesh to the scene. The nav mesh basically defines all of the walkable areas to the enemy, and the agent uses a pathfinding algorithm called A* to find the shortest path to its desired destination. So now our enemy can find the player, and we just give him a sword, and now he's able to do some damage to the player. So now that we have an enemy, it's time for the most important mechanic, speed-based damage. So I started by tracking the player's speed, and there was a formula to convert the velocity, which is in meters per second, into miles per hour. I created a system where every 10 miles per hour is equivalent to 1 damage. So if you're going 30 miles per hour, you deal 3 damage. And I made it so that if you're standing still, you just deal 1 damage. I gave the enemy 4 health, so if you're standing still, it'll take 4 shots to kill him, or if you're moving 40 miles per hour or more, you'll kill him instantly. So just by combining the grappling hook and sliding, you become way more powerful. Now with the basics in place, it's time to prototype a couple more enemies. I started by making a ranged enemy, which shoots this big red orb periodically. It feels kind of like a sniper role, and it's meant to sit in advantageous positions against the player, and punish the player for moving too slow. Then I made another ranged enemy, which shot a burst of red orbs. It does a lot of damage and it's really fast, but it also has very low health. So if it catches you off guard, it deals a lot of damage, but it's easy to dispatch them. Then I made a brute enemy, which deals a lot of damage and it has a lot of health, but it's really slow. Now with all these enemies being able to deal damage to us, we need a way to regenerate our health. To keep up with the speed-based mechanics, I decided that health would regenerate proportional to how fast you're going. So the faster you're going, the faster you heal. Now with all of this in place, I think we have a pretty satisfying combat loop. But there's one issue, and it's that the game still looks like shit. I wanted my game to have a retro aesthetic and have a dark fantasy setting, so I opened up Blender and started to create a knight character. A YouTuber named Ms. had a video showcasing how to model retro style characters. Using this video as inspiration, I modeled a basic knight and gave him a pretty basic texture as well. Now, I'm not that great at rigging and animating in Blender, so there's this resource out there called Mixamo, which is a library of free to use animations and also helps auto rig your character. I found this running animation which incorporates a sword, so I exported that and brought it into Unity. Now we can get rid of this old bean model and replace it with our brand new knight. Now our knight needs an animation to swing its sword, but there weren't any simple animations on Mixamo that I could use, but since Mixamo already rigged the character, I can just make a simple swing animation in Unity. Then I just set up animation layers so the swing animation only affects the arms, so the enemy can run and swing at the same time. I also added a speed parameter to the running animation, so the enemy's animation slows down when it's moving slow and speeds up when it's going fast. I also changed the ranged enemy to use the knight model, and I gave it a different attack animation where it uses the sword sort of like a gun to shoot at its projectile. I'll probably change this in the future, so if you have any ideas, leave a comment down below. I want to make different unique models for the brute and the burst enemy, so I'll probably save that for the next video. Lastly, I added a firing sound to the shotgun, so now when you shoot it, it feels like it's actually shooting something. So now with all of this in place, I can start making some levels. So in order to create a level, I need a way to place down objects into the scene that I can use as the ground. So the easiest way to do this is to use a built-in tool called Pro Builder. Pro Builder lets us place various shapes into the scene and scale them however we want. After we place some objects down into the scene, now they need a texture. So I use these free textures that I found online and replace those prototype textures I was using earlier. Then I created a spawning system for the enemies, so you could walk through an area and it spawns in a bunch of enemies. This helps optimize the game's performance. Lastly, I added a system for doors and buttons. With this, we can encourage the player to explore a little bit more and make the levels a little bit less linear. So now we can actually try making a level. A good level should complement the abilities that the player has. So in our case, the player is able to grapple and move really quickly. So I want to have large open spaces and platforming sections so the player has a chance to use their abilities. After messing around with Pro Builder for a little bit, I slapped together this level. After researching level design for a little bit, I realized that the level that I made is honestly not too great, and I can improve it by using these things called gameplay gardens or action blocks, which are just simple blockouts of mechanics that you would like to use in your game. So I'll probably explore that in the next video. One last thing, as for a name for the game, I'm thinking of Speed Loaded because the shotgun that you use is loaded by speed. Smash subscribe if you want to follow the development of my game, and let me know in the comments what you think of the game and its mechanics. Smash like if you like, smash dislike if you don't, and I'll see you in the next video.